So actually, today we are talking about how to write an abstract for the EULAR conference, and I would have two major goals in this presentation. So number one is a little bit explaining you what is the process, how does it work in terms of reviewing and selecting an abstract. And the second goal is to give you some concrete tips and tricks, what you should do, but also some don'ts. There are many reviewers involved, there are many people involved, and there are a lot of abstracts that we receive, and so it's really some common factors of success that can help you really to increase the probability of getting an abstract accepted. So before we start, just to show you the team who is mainly responsible for constructing the EULAR Congress, including the scientific program and the abstracts. So actually, that is me. I'm responsible mainly for the scientific program. And Bimba Hoyer, she is responsible for everything around the abstracts. And then we have a couple of people also from the EULAR team, Kanika, George, Tyler, and Andrea, who all helped together to make a nice program for you and selecting the best abstracts and really provide you a good experience with a congress in Barcelona in June next year. Yes. So actually, what options do you have? So actually, you can have two major options to submit. So number one is prepare a research abstract. And number two, if you are probably not so much a researcher, but nevertheless you would contribute to the EULAR Congress, you can also provide a case report. However, there are some basics about it. So number one, for the research abstracts, there must be, of course, original work. So it's either a basic science, translational science, a clinical science, or any of the other categories, like also HBR or PARE. For the case reports, there is one important thing. Please only submit cases that are of exceptional interest. So it's not, I had a patient with COVID-19 and this patient developed some myalgia after the COVID or something like this, which we had last time really a lot of. So it should be really something where you think this is really something exceptional that is not seen every day, that is really something that it's probably only reported a couple of times in the world. There should be really also an educational aspect on it. It can be a rare disease. It can be also a rare adverse event of a treatment or something else that you really think this is exceptional, this is not seen every day, but it would nevertheless be important for the community to hear about it and to learn from it. Actually, the data that are contained in your abstract, they should not be published as a full article before the submission deadline. So actually, this does not include publication of an abstract because they can be presented as an abstract and are also published as an abstract within 1 year of EULAR. But when they are accepted for publication as a full article, either in a print or an online journal, before the submission deadline, then you should not submit an abstract. This frequently creates a little bit of confusion, and we receive a lot of requests. So it's allowed to be published as an abstract, but not as a full article. Whereas, as I said, it might have been presented as an abstract before, but not more than 1 year before EULAR conference. So that means it's always the cutoff is the EULAR conference. So when it was presented after EULAR 2024, then it is okay. But when it was at the conference, for example, in winter 2023, then or 2024, then it's also not okay. And then we have an embargo. So after the acceptance notifications are going out, which will be around the 24th of March 2025, and EULAR, the abstracts cannot be presented. So that means every abstract that has been presented at a conference between June 2024 and March 2025, it's not a problem. However, every abstract that is older cannot be submitted, and every abstract that has been submitted to EULAR and has been accepted cannot be presented at another conference after March 2025 and the EULAR Congress. After the EULAR Congress 2025, of course, it's again allowed to present an abstract at another conference. That is also an important basic. So actually avoid salami slicing. So what does it mean? So we had in the past some abstracts about there was a single cohort and people, let's say there is a cohort of patients with rheumatoid arthritis, and then a biomarker A was investigated and published as an abstract. Then in the same cohort, they investigated biomarker B and also produced a separate abstract. And then biomarker C, etc., etc. And so in the end, there were like 10 different abstracts, always in the same cohort, doing always the same, just rotating the biomarker that was investigated. And that is salami slicing, and that is not acceptable and will lead to a rejection of an abstract. However, if you have conducted a big trial and you have several different aspects to report, then of course you can separate it in different abstracts. So for example, you have a phase 3 trial on a new drug, and then the main outcomes are packed into one abstract. Then you have some aspects like radiographic outcomes will be packed in another abstract. Then you report on patient-reported outcomes, you produce a third abstract, and then you may have a long-term extension phase, and you produce a fourth abstract. That is absolutely fine, because you cannot pack so much different aspects of one study in a single abstract. But what I meant before is really that you have one cohort, you're doing a couple of experiments which could be easily all put together in one abstract because they are also related. Then you should really avoid writing different abstracts on it. You will also be asked during the submission process whether the abstract that you are submitting is related to another abstract or to a particular study. You should also indicate that. Failing to indicate that could also lead to the rejection of an abstract. And then there is another basic rule that we have. So we would be as independent. We would like that research is presented as independently as possible for our industry. And therefore, all clinical trials of a phase 2 or above cannot be presented by a person directly affiliated to industry. So just again to highlight some important deadlines and also to remind you how to submit. So these are simply now copy and pastes from the EULAR webpage. So actually you see here, that is the address. If you click on that, then you will end up to this page. And then you see that you can make again this choice between regular submission. Regular submission means the scientific abstracts like basic and clinical, as I just mentioned before, or you can select to submit a case report. The deadline, so actually the submission is already open, and the deadline is the 15th of January. Then you see here on the left side also another line which reads as late breaking abstracts. So actually the late breaking abstracts will open after the regular submission and also after the regular selection process. It will open in April and will be open for around 2 weeks. However, the late-breaking abstracts are really meant for those studies, especially trials, which have not had the data lock before the 15th of January. So it's not a second chance if you missed to submit it by the regular deadline. So, you know, we always ask also when you submit a late-breaking abstract, what is the reason for that? And in the last Congress, we had some comments like, oh, there were the Christmas holidays and I did not have time to submit it, or something similar. Or I just did not finish my experiments in my basic research. So these are really not good reasons for a late-breaking abstract. However, if you have a trial where the last follow-up visit is in, I don't know, mid-February or so, then you simply did not have a chance to submit by the regular deadline. And then it's allowed to use the late-breaking abstract deadline. But again, it's not meant to be a second option when you miss the first one by any, let's say, less qualified reason. And of course, with a late breaking, you can only submit scientific abstracts. There's no chance to submit a case report as a late breaking abstract. So actually, just guiding you a little bit through the submission process. So actually, when you go on the submission, either regular submission or the case report submission icon, then the system drives you to the next page. Like here it was, I clicked on the regular submission, then you can select to submit your abstract. And then actually you see below that there are the different topics and categories explained. So the main categories are the basic and translational research, the clinical research, healthcare professionals, and para. So if some of you are pediatricians, then you probably notice that there is no topic for pediatrics anymore, because there was the request from the pediatric committee to include that in the regular submission process of clinical and basic research. Then, so you have basically when you click on the submit button and then you select one of the big categories like basic or clinical or HBR and para, then you find a number of subtopics, which for basic and clinically mainly corresponds to the different diseases. So I don't now go through all this, and this is also not meant to be read now. It's simply to illustrate that once you have selected the track, then you need to select a topic which corresponds, at least for the basic and the clinical, mainly to the different disease categories in rheumatology that we have. Of course, you always have also the possibility to select something like across diseases when you have produced an abstract that, for example, involves rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and scleroderma patients. And then there are other diseases which are not covered by the main ones and other topics. When you have something which is more general and is probably not applicable to any of the disease categories. Then there are the HBR topics, which are slightly different, and the same also for para. And then there's an additional way to subgroup the abstracts a little bit better, which are the keywords. So once you have selected the topic, you submit your abstract, and while you are submitting, you also are requested to add some keywords. So actually, please don't start to read all the individual keywords here. This is, again, just to illustrate that there are many of it. And the keywords will help us to better group abstracts from different topics, to better select also the reviewers for your abstract. And then also, of course, during the Congress, the keywords will be assigned to the abstract so that the users, the audience, can better find or easier find the individual abstracts. So actually, how does the abstract review and selection process work? So even though I'm giving this talk, I'm not directly responsible for the abstract selection. I was it last year, but this year I'm the chair of the program, and so I'm mainly responsible for the invited speaker sessions. And the person who is mainly responsible for the abstract selection and the creation of the abstract sessions is Bimba Hoyer. She is the abstract chair, and she has the final responsibility on all the abstract selections and which abstract is presented in which category. You know, we have the poster sessions, we have the poster tours, and we have the all abstract presentation sessions. However, she, or let's say we too, we are not alone. We have a Congress committee behind us. A Congress committee contains 25 members. They were already heavily involved in the creation of the scientific program, but they are also serving as topic chairs responsible for the suggestion and selection of the individual reviewers, and they will also help with a final selection of the abstracts. So as you can imagine, there are expected to be more than 5,000 submissions. This cannot be done by one person alone. There's always a team needed. And so in terms of the hierarchy, on the top is Bimba, and then there's the Congress Committee, which serves as the topic chairs, and then below are the reviewers. So actually, the topic chairs, they really, as the name says by itself, they are related to a topic, so mainly by a disease, and also here the keywords help. And the topic chairs, they are suggesting reviewers. Actually, it's required that we have at least 3 reviewers for each topic, because each abstract will be reviewed by 3 reviewers. And then, as you can imagine, there are some topic chairs which have several topics, because we have bigger and smaller ones, like rheumatoid arthritis is always it's a big topic where there are hundreds of abstracts submitted. And then we have smaller topics, for example, Still's disease and other autoinflammatory diseases, where there are much less abstracts submitted. And then one topic chair can also cover different smaller topics. And so he or she needs to suggest reviewers for each of these individual topics. Then, as for rheumatoid arthritis, the topic chair is not only suggesting 3 or 4 reviewers, but several, because there are so many abstracts that need to be reviewers. And so in the end, the topic chairs, they suggest more than 500 reviewers. And then they get the abstracts. So actually the abstracts, they are done once they are submitted. They are all sent out to at least 3 reviewers, as I said already before. And here the selection of the topics, the selection of the keywords help us to really assign your abstract to the right reviewer. So this was just an example of the last year. So like in array etiopathogenesis, there were like 100 abstracts, and usually it's around that one reviewer can cover up to 100 abstracts. But when you have 500 or 600 abstracts in one category, then you need definitely more than these 3 reviewers. So, and then actually the reviewers have been selected, and now they receive your abstract. And they are now supposed to evaluate your abstract and to give them a rating. So actually it goes from 1 to 5, where 1 is the lowest grade and 5 is the highest grade. Actually, they are not directly linked to a recommendation. This was before that, like 5 was the recommended or was really exceptional, outstanding, and 4 was recommended as an oral presentation. This is not anymore. It's a continuous evaluation with 5 as the highest grade and 1 as the lowest grade. However, the reviewers are asked to comment in certain situations. So actually they are free to comment on every abstract. However, especially when they are giving the lowest grade, they are absolutely asked to make a comment why they give the lowest rating. And the same also when they really give the exceptional, the highest rating, they are also asked to comment on it. And then, of course, if a reviewer feels that the abstract is out of his field of expertise, he can indicate that, and then the abstract will be reassigned. And then, you can have several situations. There are at least 3 independent reviewers, and the best situation for the topic chair is when all the reviewers are of the same opinion. Like in this case, this abstract was given as a rating of 4 by everyone, and then the decision is quite easy. So the mean is 4, and then the topic chair can make easily a decision about how to handle this abstract. However, there are, of course, sometimes some heterogeneity, like in such a case where 2 say, well, this is really an exceptional. Of course, I'm now a bit exaggerating because usually 2 5s and 1 1 is very, very rare. But if the situation if the situation was that there was a wide discordancy, then the mean would not be so bad, would not be so far away from the other one. However, there's this scoring of 1, which is disturbing a little bit. And then, of course, we need the comment from this reviewer giving the 1, but also the comments from the other two reviewer who gave a 5. And then the topic chair will review the abstract, read the comments from the reviewer, and then make a final decision. Because, there might be some problems that the other 2 reviewers probably have not noticed, like salami slicing. So actually, maybe the reviewer number 3 came across other abstracts from the same author or from the same group and identified, well, it's always the same cohort. They are really salami slicing. They could have put this easily into a single abstract, and therefore I rate this as 1. Or plagiarisms, or also ethics. So, you could have a really super innovative trial, but when the reviewers think, well, what they have done, that's really unethical, and that's really not something that should be presented. Then they can give a rating of 1, but then they need to explain, and the topic chair reads the comment, and then he decides, he reviews itself, the abstract, and then he can make a final decision. Or maybe the wrong methodology was chosen. Okay, so actually, the abstracts now have all been scored by the reviewers, and then it's now up to the topic chairs to make decisions how to handle the abstracts. Based on the scoring, they can now decide whether the abstract is presented as an oral presentation, and we have around 300. And within the oral presentation, there are, again, different possibilities. So it's like the best ones, so really those with the highest scorings, usually go to the plenary session. Then the others, which are selected for oral presentation, go to the ordinary oral presentation sessions, which are created in a meeting where all the Congress committee members, which, as I said, serve as topic chairs, sit together with the abstract chair, and then create the oral abstract sessions. And then we also have, in some of the invited speaker sessions, we have 1 or 2 slots for abstracts, and some of the oral abstracts selected for oral presentations may also go into these sessions. And then, of course, there's the late-breaking abstract session, as I said before, which is always an oral session. And, it's only a single session. It's not that we have late-breaking abstracts as posters. So there is only being selected as an oral presentation or being rejected. There are no other options for the late-breaking abstracts. While the others that are considered eligible for presentation are selected as posters. And we have around 1,300 to 1,500 posters. And then within the posters, we have the possibility of a poster tour. So those within the category of the posters which have the best rating, they are selected as a poster tour. Whereas the others are the general poster views. And then, EULAR also has this category of the abstract acceptance only, which means that the abstract is published in the EULAR journal, but it's not presented neither as a poster nor as an oral presentation at the EULAR Congress. So this was now the first part, explaining you how it works and what are really the individual steps from submitting through reviewing, scoring, selection, and generation of the oral abstract sessions. And now let me give you some tips and tricks how to best phrase your abstracts. So I need to repeat some of the things. So number one, really make sure you submit your best abstract. So really like, well, colleague, I have some lab results. They are a bit strange. I don't know what to do. Probably, I don't think that we can publish it in a journal because they are simply discordant and don't really know how to interpret. But we can always try an abstract. That's probably not the best approach because such an abstract really has a low chance to be accepted. And then your research needs to be novel and relevant. So actually, even though the 47th demonstration of the same mechanism still might have some minor value because, you know, you can never validate enough some certain things, but then maybe it's even done in a smaller population. So, you know, such an abstract also probably has a very low chance of being accepted. And then another one is, please be really as concise and as attractive as possible. So you really, and I will also tell that you recurrently in the next slides, you need to sell your abstract. So, you know, when you write the abstract, even if technically correct, but in a boring way, then it's, yeah, then you also have a priori really a low chance that the reviewer thinks that's really a great abstract. So like starting with, in this study, we thought after long internal discussion, blah, 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 blah. So when it's already the abstract starting with a long blah, 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 then, you know, the reviewer feels already bored within the first lines. And then the chances of being, of getting a high score is pretty low. So actually you need to be concise, innovative, your best research, and then also try to sell it as good as possible. And it starts already with the title. So, you know, which one of these two titles, these are both in fact saying more or less the same. But which one would you, when you were a reviewer, which one would you already from the title, from seeing the title, score higher or have a better feeling with the abstract? So when you say very clearly, validation of a new ultrasound scoring system for the diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, that's already, I think, generating a bit of interest. But when you make it very complex and long and difficult to understand, and with a lot of vagueness already within the title, then it's already giving a bad impression to the reviewer. So you know, like here, an early pre-pilot study, of course, this is exaggerated to make my point. My point here is really sell it, make the title attractive, because the reviewers always look first at the title. And when the title is already boring and vague and unclear, they have already a bad impression. And therefore, the title is already something you really should work on. And then, you know, each abstract has a number of categories. So it always has some background, objectives, the methods, the results, the conclusion, and the references. And actually, when you start with the background, it's really that you need to bring your research into context. So what is the issue? And then in the objective, really, what was the purpose of the study? What did we really address? And this is just here to give you an example of one abstract. So it needs to be concise. It needs to be brought into the context of general research and the current understanding of in rheumatology, and also highlighting what is the relevance. Like here, the predicting early RA from extremity MRI facilitates timely treatment, possibly preventing chronicity. So here you have explained already what is the relevance of this abstract. And then what is the need? Why do we need a study? Actually, we need it because image interpretation by AI may provide more accurate predictions than visual scoring. So this is concise and very clear, brought into the context. And then the same for the objectives, it needs to be very clear, short, what did we in this study? We tested a deep learning AI method that automatically analyzes MRI scans by pre and post processing images in order to predict array. Next one is the methodology. So actually here, it's also again the same, be precise and brief. And then imagine you just give your abstract to a friend of yours who is also doing some research, and then you ask him, now by reading these methods, would you be able to reproduce the work? Of course, the methods in an abstract cannot contain every detail, that's pretty clear, but at least conceptually, the other person who has never heard about the abstract or the work in general should be able to understand what has been done and what were the individual steps. So really also the reviewer needs to know what has been done in this study. But nevertheless, be concise. So to give you an example, of course, the method section is always a little bit longer than the background and the objectives. That needs to be. And like in this study, I don't now read all the individual parts, but just to highlight a couple of concepts. So actually, it needs to be present who conducted the research, who was involved, especially for clinical trials and clinical studies, what has been done, and how has it been done. I think this who, what, how, if you follow that rule and when you read before you submit and you read your abstract and try really to mark these 3 questions, and you need to find the answer in your method. Who did the research or who was involved? What has been done and how has it been done? For the results, actually for the results, it's again about selling. So you need to sell the results. You cannot report all the results in your abstracts. You don't have the space for that. Therefore, you need to select what are the most important findings. You need to be clear and you need to be concise. And please include some numbers. So, if you make a description of the results, like treatment A was superior to placebo group in the majority of patients and blah, blah, blah. So that means when you keep it only vague without including any clear numbers, then the reviewer really cannot imagine how the study was conducted and whether it's a good or a bad study. So you need to really include some numbers, the number of patients that participated or completed the study, and then also the clear effect of a treatment or the clear result in a basic science study. I don't know, when you have cytokine A and cytokine B measured, really include the numbers in the abstracts for the cytokine A, the levels, and also the levels for cytokine B. So here, some examples. So this is an example of one of my abstracts where I really tried to include the most important numbers and the most important findings. So like here, 110 patients. And then in terms of what were their primary outcomes, it was really 9 out of 30 patients, and then the percentage, and then in the control group and the p-value. So actually my point here is, I don't say that this is really the ideal or the best search. Absolutely not. That's not my point. My point is that I see abstracts where no numbers are included at all, which are vaguely described and where it's very difficult to understand whether there was any effect, whether the effect was big, and really what was done at all in that study. So therefore, include the numbers for the most important findings. And you can also include a table and or a figure. So actually, it's usually you have 2 things, so either 2 figures or 2 tables or 1 and 1 that you may include. And that's also helpful in terms of reporting already some numbers in the abstract. Last part, conclusion. So actually, the conclusion, there I always see, not always, I frequently see a lot of mistakes. So actually, the conclusion is the link from your results to clinical practice or future research. So the conclusion is not the place where you should not simply repeat the results, and especially you should not present any new results. So the conclusion is the conclusion. It really helps in 1 sentence or in 2 sentences the reader to interpret your findings and to bring them into the perspective of clinical practice of future research. And therefore, I frequently see that the conclusions simply say, in a bit other words, exactly the same as the results. That is not a conclusion. The conclusion should link the results with clinical practice of further research. And another mistake is when you report any new results in the conclusions. So the conclusion should always be based on what has been presented in the results and not be the place for including new results. And again, be concise. So actually, this is again an abstract from our group, how we phrase the conclusion. So actually, we don't present here any new results. The conclusion is based on what has been reported before in the results section. We make like a summary, which helps to interpret. We demonstrate a certain reliability for inter and intra-rater reading of a certain score, and also what here is the link to the clinical practice. And there are no new results here. It's really the linkage between the results and the clinical practice. Yes, it's a take-home message, short, clear, and based on the results. And then, globally, you always should think about a bit what is your what is the audience. So actually, the audience, they are usually, before they read your abstract, they have no idea what you are doing or what is your research about. And therefore, you need to write your abstract in a way that these people can understand what has been done, how has it been done, what are the findings, and what are these findings meaning for clinical practice. Like I already emphasized before in the method section. And therefore, it would be really a good idea to ask someone who is absolutely not involved in your project to read the abstract and to ask whether he or she would have understood what you have done, what you found, and what does this mean for clinical practice. And again, I cannot emphasize it enough. Sell your abstract. Stress in the title, stress in the objectives, and stress also in the conclusions. What makes your abstract so unique, interesting, and relevant? Avoid in any way to be vague, boring, and repetitive, because that makes an abstract absolutely less attractive. And then I think your abstract is ready for submission. Again, to repeat it, I don't know, for the 5th or 6th time now, think about the originality of the abstract. Has it a high scientific quality? Is it novel? Is it relevant? Is it concise and clear? Is it interesting for the target audience? Have you really make every effort to sell your research in the best way? And then also with a bit of luck, you are selected maybe not only for ordinary oral presentation, but even for the plenary session. And that was it. I'm happy now to take any questions. At this point, I wanted also to thank Caroline Osbelt, who helped me out with providing some of these slides. And yes, Good luck now with drafting your abstract, with the submission process, and then hopefully your abstract will be selected for being presented at the EULAR conference 2025 in Barcelona from 11th to 14th June.